and welcome to Everything They Don't Want You to Know. We are going to talk today about a very fundamental aspect of this life that they don't want you to know, that they've gone out of their way to sort of keep out of like things like the New Testament. If you dig into teachings of Christ beyond the things that you find in the Bible, there are other things that you could find. You will find that, Christ sounds a lot like a Buddhist or one of the ancient Vedas. He was clearly reading from those books and entertaining some of these thoughts. And some of these thoughts are actually communicated in code within the Bible. And I mean, there are some people who, like, when I say this to or whatever, they'd be like, well, actually, the Bible actually says, there's a lot of different interpretations when it comes to the Bible and these things. As a lot of you guys know now, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, I was a hardcore atheist. The whole Christ on the cross thing really tripped me out as a kid, very young. I decided that was a play. They were trying to affect how I was feeling, and it wasn't positive. They were trying to make me feel badly, and I didn't like that. So I sort of decided right then that religion wasn't really a good idea, because really the religion of the Snider family is positive mental attitude. I have it tattooed on my body, positive mental attitude on my family crest. My father and my mother are both really great disciples of Tony Robbins. And a positive mental attitude, as we've been talking about in the past couple episodes that we did on prayer, and I forget what we did before that, but we also talked a little bit about having a positive mental attitude. You're living in a mental universe. Yeah, the mental attitude's the biggest thing. We talked about going to do the rain dance. The rain dance isn't, God, there's no rain, we need rain. Because the shaman said what? If you tell God there's no rain, we need rain, then God says, oh, there's no rain, you need rain? And it stays just like that. What the shaman did was he imagined the future exactly the way he wanted it, and was grateful retroactively for the bounty that he knew there's no reason why that shouldn't be just like that. Thank you. I'm so grateful. He created an energetic representation of the reality that he wanted to tell God what he wanted. You tell the universe what you want by imagining what you want, not by pointing out what you don't want. So we're living in this interesting mind. I eventually came to not a religious understanding, but a very practical science understanding. This isn't religion, man. We're fucking living in a virtual reality. We're computer programs. We're a whole bunch of ones and zeros. And we're a mind. And we're essentially an infinite number of separate realities that are choosing to create a shared reality where we agree upon all these different things. And some of this is because, mothers and fathers are being born into the reality, whatever, and then society, we're all deciding on a lot of things together. But what we don't realize is people who really know have sort of created a abattoir here on Earth. We are contained. We don't know how to leave this system. We don't know how to think and grow beyond it. And there is a think and grow beyond it. And so much of these UFOs, though some of them may well be American-made, and there's a lot of odd things about the UFOs. We talked about that on the Aliens episode, I think, that we did a while back. There's a lot going on out there. And the highest level of it, the beings that are interacting with us in the slightest ways, are these higher dimensional consciousnesses who are basically taking control of their own reality, their inner reality. When we go into interactions with people, we hold half of the hand, essentially, and they hold the other half. If we think that they're always going to let us down, we are actually working against any work that they might be doing to not let us down. If we think that they're never going to let us down, even when they've let us down a million times, we keep the door open for them to not let us down. And the moment the stars are in alignment, or, and by that stars in alignment, I mean the pressure that is being put on all of the bodies, which is creating a wave, like your tide goes in, your tide goes out. This is sometimes you're very tired in this reality because the tide is out. And then the tide goes in and you feel like you can do some things. There's a saying that millionaires don't do their horoscopes, billionaires do. And it's because these are the secrets that they don't want you to know. And the billionaires will put themselves on a schedule where when the stars say don't do something, like not a good time to start new things, they don't. And when the stars say great time to start new things, they do. And there's a lot more that you can kind of get out of knowing your astrology really good for yourself personally, because based on the pressures of that ocean within you, when you were born, based on the pressures of that day, the way the stars were aligned, what it was doing to the water within you, is going to be the formation of who you are. And the formation of who you are isn't like all the weird details that we see of like, oh, that kid's a goth kid and that kid's weird and he likes this and he's trans, and like, it's not that. It's about the measurement of the two energies, which we've talked about this before. Gender. Real gender, when you get down to the ancient idea of gender is just the two energies that exist on Earth, masculine and feminine. And the masculine and feminine essentially represent rest and activity. Rest can also be interpreted as preservation. Of course, you can take a lot of these, there's energy interpretations can be interpreted a lot of ways, but the way I like to think of it is in terms of, the masculine tends to preserve the status quo and the feminine goes, ooh, yes, I love this, but what if we did this, and then, so the masculine will resist change because it loves the thing as it is, and the feminine's trying to bring change forward, and that's sort of the balance between these two energies. But however you want to think about them, there's two energies within you. Some people are more dominantly masculine. Some people are more dominantly feminine. Reincarnation is actually about balancing that. There's a lot of things about the LGBTQ community, and like I said, I'm non-binary, and I have always considered myself a member of the LGBTQ community. I only push back against a lot of things that have been done to represent my community because I don't think that it's good. I don't think it's good messaging. I'm somebody who's studied marketing and writing and all these sorts of things. And like, I know how to win people over. And you don't win people over the way that we are right now. Because trans and the LGBT community and all this stuff, it's a whole bunch of confusion, really, about reincarnation. We've been made to feel like being not what your body says you are is like a fucked up thing or weird, And you know what? We got to forgive everybody a little bit when it comes to this weirdness. I see children, my kids, they have not been able to help themselves of sort of making fun of, and me and my ex-wife, we both keep trying to get them away from this, but making fun of some kids in their school who come to school as dogs and they bark and they this may be the natural formation of these kids. This may be a natural experience for these kids. It may be. There's a lot of sort of, I see parents kind of like raising their kids with a lot of pressure in strange directions, which is strange to me. It used to be sort of like, the parents were putting pressure on you to be more normal and you were like resisting. Now there's like parents who kind of put pressure on their kids like to be weird, which I don't like because the whole journey of on Earth is to learn to be our authentic selves. Okay? If you think about like the horoscope as a whole bunch of little mathematical equations, Jesse's 4 plus 6, and the next person who is born a couple hours after me, he's 4 plus 7, 4 plus 8, and 4, and it keeps going, where we all end up being different measurements of this mathematical equation that basically you call masculine and feminine. But it's also these maths are then juxtaposed by the maths of your parents or the maths of the people who you're interacting with regularly in your life, creating very unique mathematical equations where your energy is going to play itself out. In one way or another, like if you guys are very simpatico, you'll become really good friends, and maybe you're different in one way or another, and you're learning from each other. However, you might have a friend or a parent or whatever where you guys have a real juxtaposition between who you are and who they are on a fundamental level, and that is your journey. Now, these journeys of all these interesting juxtapositions with the other maths, they become a little bit more unique beyond just that, because there is reincarnation. And reincarnation is essentially a accounting of where you have left things in your previous carnations. There's a lot of really strange things that you get into when you get into like sort of time and consciousness that makes all of this reincarnation story very confusing, confounding, hard to get a complete grasp upon. And when you look into this subject, you'll definitely find some things that you're like, what? I don't understand. My other incarnations are happening simultaneously? All time is happening simultaneously? I can change the past by changing myself in the future? These are the sorts of concepts that really start to come your way. And while I still am not skilled enough and understanding enough to really be the person to teach you what good can be done of these things, I am a person who can tell you to how you can begin this process of exploring who you are deeply. Okay? Because there is a lot of benefit from it, and I'm going to give a lot of examples and and point you into a few places that I think not that will convince you, but if you're open to the idea that it might be, this will have you going, oh yeah, yeah, seems reasonable. I was an atheist, but I did always kind of have a door open for reincarnation. It seemed so fucking complicated and like beyond, well, how the fuck would that even work? And energy and blah, 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 blah. And I thought maybe it was like a more like unintelligent version of itself. Energy coming back or something. Because I was an idiot who thought like we died and that was it. But the energy lives on. There is a book that went through my family. The Snider family were blessed by 3 or 4 books that we all ended up reading, and they really changed our minds about a lot of things. One of the other ones I mention all the time is The Field. Everything is connected, and it's very provable. That's a great book, The Field. This one is the first one, though. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters. This is what it looks like if you go to Amazon. It's by Brian L. Weiss, MD. If you see that, for the people, I've been doing this on Facebook Live for some of you people who are just listening. I'm going to eventually be doing this live on YouTube, but I don't really like being on camera while I do my podcast. I love doing the podcast because I just talk and like I don't think about what I look like, and I'm super self-conscious about like what I look like sometimes, and I'm trying to get over it. So I've just been doing this on Facebook to warm up because it's like largely decent friends of mine. So Many Lives, Many Masters. It's a New York Times bestseller. Now it says on the cover, the timeless classic. And I mean, me and my family were like just blown away by this book. The true story of a prominent psychiatrist, his young patient, and the past life therapy that changed both their lives. This doctor was not somebody who was open to these ideas. This stuff kind of just started happening. You really got to read the book. But for me, as a skeptic, and I was a major skeptic, I was an atheist and I was a skeptic, and I read this book and I went, fuck, I believe this guy. Like, I believe that this shit happened. Like, I don't think he's fucking lying about this. And it's funny because there's stories from this book And I don't even know if because maybe some, these stories exist. This is a real life book, so there's real life stories that he's talking about. So theoretically speaking, as I'm saying, like, there are stories stolen from this book, not necessarily stolen from this book, but there are stories that you see go around online that you will get better fucking context for in this book, that they happened. There's a story I've seen a bunch about the kid who. I think he was born with some sort of birthmark, and he remembered that was where he got shot or stabbed. I forget what it was, but he was killed, and he remembered who did it, and they were like they weren't far away. They were like near to the town, and he showed them where his body was buried, and it was buried there, and this guy got arrested for the crime. After this dude was dead, he came back in another body and fucking got the dude. Maybe you sit there and doubt that story. I know enough now not to doubt that story, because there's a lot more stories like that. A lot more. And stories throughout history. So many stories. And just give me a second, like, to get into my family and some of the things that all of us have connected with, because it's kind of crazy. Now, this book definitely opened us up in, a lot of ways, just accepting this notion that we come back, right? My brother Shane started doing, what do you call it? Past life regressions on YouTube. So YouTubers who had made hypnosis videos that were similar to what they would do normally with somebody in a session, and they, basically present that there to anybody to essentially open themselves up to a possible reincarnation experience, and then they do the same thing that they would do to bring you back down, and you listen to the thing, and some people have incredible success with this, and Shane has. I'm just gonna share one little bit of Shane has had a lot of interesting experiences, and has connected to some of his past lives in very major ways. And I'll say, like, one of the lives, this person's written some books, and he was a fan of this person, and then all of a sudden started sort of putting together parallels, and figuring out some things as he started exploring past lives. But the past life that I really want to tell you about is, well, when I heard this story, it was like somebody had walked over my grave. And, I kind of have the least part in the story. Like, I don't even know if he saw me in this scenario, but he knew that I was a member of his family, and he knew, though, that I was a girl. And so it was the same sort of scenario: brother, Cody and Shane, and older sister Jesse, but different names, and my mom and my dad were his mom and his dad. So this was a life where we were together, just like this. And often you come back together to get the things right that you didn't get so right before. So this scenario, my brother wakes up, and he is this Native American kid, and he's having this experience. He's thinking about his family, I guess. So that's probably when he, like, sort of keys on everything, like, mom and dad and my sister and, sister Jesse. And he was with his brother Cody, but he can't find him, and he doesn't know where he is, and he feels drunk. But finally he puts his hand on his head, and he feels his head, and he's bleeding. And he realizes, oh fuck, I'm not drunk. I'm hurt. And I don't know where I am. And he starts calling for my brother Cody. The wolves hear his calls, and a pack of wolves appears around him, and he is attacked and eaten alive by wolves. And he continues to see what happened after that from above. He sees his mother and father arrive to find his body with his brother, who desperately ran for help when his brother got hurt. But sorry, my phone likes to call on my computer. So my brother Cody, when Shane got hurt, he ran for help because he was scared. And in that time, Shane woke up, was yelling, and these wolves killed him. And my brother Cody blamed himself so hard. And Shane could see Cody blaming himself for this. And Cody had made like 2 or 3 short films at that point. In some way or another, and some blatantly, they were all about this. They were about leaving somebody you loved, a friend, behind. One of the stories is literally about this guy chickening out of a fight and all of his friends getting beaten up and hurt, and now he's just so ashamed they all got hurt, and then like he decides he's going to go and he's going to do something about it, and he puts some coins in his hand to go so his fist hits harder to beat these guys up, and he gets killed or gets hurt really bad. I forget exactly what it is, but it was all about this guilt of him being scared and leaving his friends behind. And I wasn't making these movies, but the story, man, the story freaked me out. Really freaked me out. It felt so close to me. It felt very close to my heart. And in these scenarios, if you start exploring this stuff, these are a lot of the things that you may have to face and see. I have tapped into this life with my ex-wife. Apparently, years later, I'm this little Native American lady. And I lived in like a cabin kind of in the woods. I guess made for me by this big Scandinavian man who I was married to, who I'm pretty sure is my ex-wife Patty. And she was sick. She was dying. And I knew it, and he knew it. And I was begging him to let me take him to my special place in the mountain where I did my magic. And I had herbs up there and things and I could help him. I knew I could help him if he just had faith. But he didn't really believe in that stuff. He came from a different world, and I grew up with that stuff, but he didn't believe. And maybe I made him believe a little bit, but he didn't really believe. And he was dying, and it was like a mile away. And is that how? Yeah. And it was up the mountain, and he knew that he couldn't get there. And he probably didn't think I could get him up there. And basically, I wouldn't take no for an answer. And when he went unconscious, I started dragging him up the mountain. And I got to this experience the same way that Shane did. And, for Shane, it was pretty vivid. For me, it was not so vivid. And the first 1 or 2 times that I tried meditating into the reincarnation, I never got anything, even though I'd had a good meditation. But the third or second or third time I did it, I saw this all very vividly. And I remember in the middle of it, because if you've listened before, I tell you I'm a channel. I'm an open channel. My intuition is what guides my music, and every smart thing that I've ever done comes from my intuition. Just trusting my gut, being able to and I can get a lot of easy communication, whether it's dead people or whoever I need to speak to, and I hear them pretty good. And as I was under this hypnosis, I started questioning what they were telling me. I don't know. It just all seemed like a bunch of fucking malarkey. How convenient, this story coming into my head. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it just seemed stupid. And it was at the point where they told me that the only place I could heal my husband was up in the mountain where I had this special place. And I said, like, and I'm saying it like that to my spirits, like, oh, this is bullshit, like spirits, like, blah, 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 special place in the mountain. And they say to me, why does Jesse Blaze Snider have a special place where he does his magic? And that really hit me, because right now, past few years, I've been basically having to do a lot of traveling back and forth, so I haven't had like an office set up. But generally speaking, I have always had an office. My whole company, Blacklight District Studios, is all about the idea of this happy space where I put up my blacklight posters of all the shit that I love that glows in the dark, and I surround myself with the shit that I love, and I create things. I always have a special place where I do things. I always have a certain amount of sort of ritual to like the things that I do. Like, that's dead on. And here I am, some witch lady, and yeah, I had a spot in the mountain, and I'd carved into the rock a little bit, and I had, runes or whatever you might want to call it, different things that I had set up there so that I could do magic, not just for myself or whatever, but for the world. And meditation, prayer, it helps everybody. There was this huge study, I think I mentioned it last time. It was an experiment where they had thousands of people meditating on world peace, and they measured the violence levels and the crime and like all these different metrics, and they proved that there was a noticeable knockdown in crime that from what was usual. And this is absolutely real. So to have a place that was connected to the mountain and was an antenna to the earth and could really allow me to connect most directly to Gaia, the planet where everything comes from. Who's like, every time I meditate, the first person I connect to is Gaia. I connect I visualize a sort of crystalline anchor that I put down into the earth, and I wrap it around. Nowadays, I just kind of have it wrapped around all the time, and I'm always connecting myself to Mother Gaia. But I'll say, hello, my good Mother Gaia, I love you, how are you? And she'll say, how are you? Or something like that. It's interesting. If you listen and you open yourself up, you can talk to the trees, you can talk to the rocks. Everything has consciousness on some level, and you can learn to interpret that consciousness. So anyway, I was like goofing on this, and they made me feel like a fool in just 1 second. Why would Jesse Blaze Snider have a really special place where he did his magic? And I just went, okay, you're right. That does sound like me. And then I saw myself drag this man up the mountain, and he was a big fucking guy. And it's so interesting because Patty, she comes from like her family. They're gigantic people, really big people, like just all basketball players, especially the women. Like, I mean, there is some crazy height in her family. And this guy who I'm this little itty bitty round, not like super fat, but big ass, and like I was this Native American lady, kind of curvy, and I'm dragging this. He had to be 6 foot something up the mountain, and I'm seeing myself doing this, and then, oh my God, so clearly did I see it, and by now I'd kind of like letting my guard down in this meditation to feel it, but I saw myself kneeling over his body and crying and banging on his chest, just not wanting to accept that he had died on the way up the mountain. He died before I could get him up there and before I could do anything to try to save him. And the reason why we have these experiences is so that we can connect to the part of us that longs to reconcile our hearts and our minds. And there was a bit of a lesson there in terms of like what I took away from the moment of like, if he would have just listened to me, I could have saved him. Why wouldn't he just listen to me? And that's not the right answer. You could take a horse to water, but you can't force the horse to drink. And at that time in our relationship, I was growing exponentially as a consciousness. I worked with the psilocybin meditationally, and that took away my depression for a little while and really opened me up. And then I began working with the ayahuasca, and I began to really understand what was going on here on planet Earth, and that everything that we're taught about worrying about things, about fearing this calamity, that calamity, like everything we do, it's sort of based around these fears of what happened yesterday. But when we're guided by fear, it destroys everything that we do. And in a lot of ways, I am absurdly brave. And, people think I'm like an egomaniac sometimes and stuff because they see this bravery that I have. I'm not concerned about what people think about this or what people think about that. But there are levels that I have been deeply affectable. And largely, for me, it's always kind of come down to like what I want for myself, what I believe I can be, what I believe I can do. A desire to be truly good and for people to know that I have their best interest at heart, and feeling misunderstood and getting very angry about that. Angry like, it's like, I was bringing you a flower and you thought it was shit. Fuck you. No, I don't want to give you the flower. And that's not a good way to be. But getting to this point where, I was putting so much effort, too much effort, into trying to make people happy, trying to please other people, trying to make other people understand me. But people who are going to misunderstand me are going to misunderstand me, Like, it's not that I am particularly controversial or anything. I'm just me. And I'm willing to look at things and entertain things that other people won't look at or entertain. And I'm not going to be shut down anymore and made to feel bad, thinking about these things. Because I've come to understand that that's the thing. We can't be suppressing who we are. And, that is one of the biggest lessons of this whole experience here on Earth. Even though we get these terrible reinforcements of the idea that we shouldn't be who we are, and we tend to come into each life with a certain amount of experience like that. Now, before I had this experience where I saw this thing with Patty and me sort of realizing that like I can't force the things that I come to understand on other people, all I can do is sort of present them to them lovingly and, hope that they get something from it. But, it's up to them. It's not up to me. And the more I try to force, the more resistance it creates just within the interaction of the experience. Like, well, why is he wrestling with me so much? That's always the thing of like, well, why are you upset then? Like, so you really have to be sort of a neutral party as much as possible, not bringing in any old fears or old outdated things. When you can get to this neutral place, I came to understand, that is when you can really recreate your reality, basically however you'd like. I believe I'm getting to this place right now, and my reality is starting to recreate itself in all sorts of incredible ways, actually, and I'm seeing it play out. And leading up to this, there was lots of sort of like little versions of this where like I would make a good decision, sort of in my mind to think a certain way about something, and then I would see relatively shortly these things play out, this change that I made. So, seeing that past life with Patty was important for me because she was in resistance to a lot of the crazy things that I was coming back and telling her. And she started to say things like, maybe I'm supposed to keep your feet on the ground, you know. And I knew that the reality was I'm supposed to be in cahoots with my person so that we can create together. I need a person who believes in the power of their thoughts so that we can put our thoughts together and we can make whatever we want to make. When two people come together on earth and decide that something is true, God says he will make it true in heaven. They say that in the Bible. But it's not bullshit. It's science, man. It's two consciousnesses putting their consciousnesses together and deciding 100% on a certain course of action or a certain thing being true. And it opens up the door to that thing being true. So I knew, essentially, that being in a relationship with somebody who we couldn't get onto the same page about what was possible and what was true, and Patty was starting to get really frustrated about a lot of different things of being a musician, a creative person, whatever. She was having a lot of doubt that she was feeling. And this is a perfectly reasonable thing. Most people feel a lot of doubt and whatnot. But as I was trying to transform myself into this next level being that can really believe myself into the right places by taking the right action and going with the flow and not being in resistance, because this isn't doing things is doing things. It's always doing things. This isn't you're going to do nothing and everything's going to come to you. Action is required. Inspired action. We've talked about this before. I like to tell the joke about the guy who's going to drown. He's on his roof and the water keeps going up higher and higher and higher, and he's praying to God, and there's a boat comes and he says, nah, God's going to save me. And another boat comes and he says, no, God's going to save me. And then a helicopter comes and he says, God's going to save me. And he fucking drowns and he goes up to heaven and he says, what the fuck, God? That was so embarrassing. I told everybody you were going to save me and you let me die. And he says, what? I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. Okay? God is not dude in a robe. God is the energy of the universe. It's just configured differently into different shapes and whatever else. But you are magnetizing yourself with the things you want, with the reality you want, and it will be yours. Because on the other side of everything, you can create the woman of your dreams and make sure that she's on the earth. You can create the man of your dreams. Whatever it is, you can create the thing of your dreams. All is made. If there's like a girl of your dreams and we could make that so that you would have that as a possibility, why wouldn't we? This is a mind experiencing itself, trying to figure itself out. Now, we're all fucked up about what's really going on here, and we're like fucking ourselves up and fucking our friends up and holding people back with our consciousnesses because, well, if they succeed, then what's that going to say about me? And doing all of these kind of shitty things to one another. Even subtly shitty things like my brother Cody having a scare response to his brother getting hurt, leaving, and ultimately leaving being a much worse decision because now his brother got screwed up and killed by wolves. But if maybe he was a little braver in that moment, so why does Cody re-experience this? So that he can see how important bravery is. So he can write some fucking movies about it and spread that message around to some other people who might need it. And now maybe those portions of the consciousness of God can go through their existence without leaving a brother behind and having to experience coming back to find him eaten by wolves, which is terrible. We don't want that experience to be propagated any further. Now, my mom, my brothers, even my father now we've been able to get him into, we got my dad doing, and I don't know if he's still doing it right now. I hope he is because I know he's been dealing with a couple issues. He's going to be 70 on the 15th. Happy birthday to Dad. 5 days from now, we're going to go visit my family with my kids. I'm excited about that. So he's doing microdosing of mushrooms. You don't feel it at all, but the microdosing, there's a certain regimen that you get on, and the low-level doses of the mushrooms, they really can help a lot of things. But my mom and my brothers and my sister and myself, we've all done ayahuasca extensively, and I think my mom's done some actual high dose mushroom ceremonies with they do a lot of ceremonies together with some they've got kind of a little coven with my sister and my mom, so they like to do stuff that all the girls together, which I get insulted because I'm like, dude, I'm just as feminine as you motherfuckers, and you guys count me as one of the boys, and it's such bullshit. Feel free to pass that on to them. Jesse feels hurt because he thinks he's more like a girl than a boy, and he would like to be included in your girl fun. I, it's true. um, so my mom, she did ayahuasca. The first time she went, won't get into everything of her experience, but she had two experiences that I think, for whatever reason, would be too hard for me to have. But they were important for me to experience through her. Because it was hard to do that. My mom, I remember there's like this old door that she said that like she had to like touch, and there was this whole ceremony. When she went and did the ayahuasca with this old this shaman, he was on some levels a very powerful shaman, and some really she really had some next level experiences when she was there. And I always get just like a little bit jealous. Now I understand on some level. I've been asked to not have such visual experiences because they want me to get really good at doing everything by feel, because it's an extension of my intuition. And I have gotten really good at doing things by, I mean, like, I can see this is very weird to say. I can see entities without actually seeing them, which is so strange. I can look in front of me, and if there was something there, and just so happens where my girl lives, the house she lives in, there's a portal in this house, and there's a lot of weird things that have happened in this house long before I got there, and a lot of weird things. I mean, just the other day, a cat walked by my girl's leg. She went down to pet it because we have two cats, and it was gone. And she looked in the bedroom, and our two cats were sleeping. And she even kind of thinks it looked like her cat that she grew up with, who was black, like a cat that she had before Chester. Creepy stuff happens at this place. And we had an experience where Julie was seeing something, and I couldn't see it, but I could perceive it, and it was the weirdest thing. He came right up on me, and I could perceive the depth of how far away he was from me, even though he was completely invisible. This is a very strange experience. This thing was completely invisible, but I still knew where it was. I knew exactly where it was. And then it was like on me, and I sort of communicated with it because there's this portal, and occasionally things come through it, and I usually have to banish them or politely ask them to leave. But we've had some really weird experiences, and when I'm not there, the experiences tend to get even crazier, and I'll get all sorts of messages of weird things happening at the house. There are lots of people in this world who are having weird things like this happening. Aliens, forgotten memories, woke up in a weird place. But people don't fucking talk about this stuff because they just think everybody would think they're crazy. Literally, as I was saying all that to you, I started to go, man, I can't believe you're actually saying this out loud to these people. People are probably going to think you're crazy. But I don't care. That happened. And when I asked the entity, I don't exactly understand what it was, but it was some sort of bit of consciousness. I don't know if it was existing physically in another reality. I think it might have been, but I knew where it was, and and I talked to it, and it left, and I knew that it was gone. So it's like there are people who are so close, they're so far away from what I'm dealing with in my existence at this point that like it's just kind of funny to me. Because, like, while we're struggling to accept something like reincarnation, and I'm, like, dealing with all these fucking consciousnesses on the other side of things all the time, and I'm like, there's definitely another side where everything's coming from. So why not this reincarnation? Why not all these things? I mean, everybody just loves to be able to just explain everything away. Explain away you doing your homework, and you can tell that somebody's looking at you, and you're like, what's going on there? A little telepathy, a little sensory, intuitive something, knowing that you're being observed. There are so many little things in everyday life that actually are open doors if you just question them for a second, and you're like, oh wow, look at all this stuff. So my mom is really having a next level experience, and she puts her hand on this door in this ceremony. And what she experiences next really freaked her out and really freaked me out. She remembered she experienced herself tied to a post with burning branches all beneath her. She was being burned as a witch. And she said she never felt the fire, but the smoke, the smoke was overwhelming. All the smoke that was coming up. She couldn't breathe. She was choking, and that she choked on the smoke, I guess, before she felt the burning. But she had been burned as a witch. And nowadays, as I know and I understand the different things that are possible, I had a little shaman lady, and I had my little place, and I'm doing my little medicine and nutrition, all this stuff. People being burned as a witch. I'm sure that that's happened to me before. When I was younger, I had some really bad experiences with groups. Friend groups where one person like poisoned the entire group against me, and like overnight I was persona non grata in a group of friends, and it affected me really hardcore. I basically never was in a big friend group after that. I never trusted a group of people because I saw that the group think could be so easily changed by one person coming into the group and changing the dynamic. And later in my life, I was really my dad thought he was doing a good thing, but he tried to call like an intervention, not like because I was doing drugs or anything. I was straight edge, but it was about like my personality, and it was a real misunderstanding of like why I behaved the way I behaved, and it was a bit too aggressive for my sensitive nature, and it completely hit the exact same button that these friends turning on me had hit, and it was a major feeling that I had of like groups, not trusting groups. And I mean, I've never trusted. I recommend you don't trust groups either. Religious groups, secret societies. There's so many groups, and like just seeing how groups could be manipulated so easily, and feeling like that's sort of like they'll lynch you, they'll turn around and kill you. You know, like feeling that unease. When my mom told me that story, I meditated on it long after, and I now know I have experienced that as well. But it was, they're kind of soft with me. I will say to you, when I do these psychedelic medicines, I've been working in other lives with these psychedelic medicines I know now for thousands of years, like a long time. So it's sort of like back to where I was, like when I did the mushrooms the first time, it really clicked on the part of me that is a reincarnated being that knows, oh yeah, I've done this before. And I've got a couple things wrong here, and this is a little bit more like this, and it started adjusting and growing from that experience. But it turned me on to the oneness and the idea that, yeah, I think I've been around. The second experience that my mom had was even more terrible. She saw herself hiding and crying and trying to, muffle her cries outside of this temple where she knew her friends were. And they were being tortured and killed. And it was all because of her and what she believed and what she encouraged them to do. Stand up for themselves, whatever it might be. In this place on planet Earth, there have been inquisitions. There have been crusades. There have been wars. There's been rape. There's been murder. There's been torture. Beyond planet Earth, if you get deeply into some of the alien mythology that seems to come up pretty consistently from the stuff, we have an asteroid belt, which may be a planet, maybe called Maldek. And we have another planet that is now red and almost seems like they blew up a bunch of nuclear warheads on Mars. They say that there are still beings living under the planet's surface on Mars. But Mars is a pretty barren-looking place. And they say that these beings from Maldek, when that planet exploded, these beings had to reincarnate onto Mars to work out their karma with the Martians, who they were at war with. And now, within a few generations, there's civil war on Mars because these beings from Maldek are now reincarnated there, and that ultimately war broke out on Mars, and there was civil war, and the civil war that happened on Mars made the planet mostly inhospitable, and what we see now. And now we have as many people as we have here on planet Earth, because within the cosmic scheme of things, within the solar system, there was a lot of karma that needed to be worked out in a dense location, in an area of dense energy, of negativity and disbelief. Positivity and belief is essentially just consciousness behaving normally. But this unraveling of or lowering of we're hurting each other, we're raping each other, we're feeling separation, and we don't know who and what we really are, and we have to go on a free will journey to discover what that is. So Mars and Maldek no longer hospitable places. Could it be also that this planet is dealing with the karma, the cosmic karma of these warring planets that turned into a warring planet? And what are we? What have we been? We have been a warring planet as well in so many ways. There's interpretations of the Tower of Babel that say the Tower of Babel was actually a stargate that was used to bring a lot of different beings from different places, perhaps Mars. I don't know where. I wasn't there. But these are things that are talked about, and they seem as credible as anything else within some of these interesting conversations about the possibilities of what was really going on in ancient times when pyramids were built and all this other shit. The last thing that I want to talk about within this is significance. Not feeling silly for significance. There's billions of people on this planet now, but there have been less. And as you funnel down into the funnel gets smaller of all the incarnations that people are having. And the odds that there might be 6 degrees of separation between you and Jesus or you and someone else is not impossible. I mean, all of us are related to fucking Genghis Khan for the most part. There's a huge percentage of people on planet Earth who are, because of how much banging he did at a very particular time in history, so that all these years later, as all these generations prosper, he's got many, 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 many great descendants. So when you go into an experience, if you connect with Jesus or something like that, don't discredit what is feeling, what you're feeling. Perhaps Yeshua was your fucking teacher. Perhaps Yeshua was you. You don't know. You never know. Because of reincarnation, the whole idea of like the second coming and the Antichrist and all these things, they're real. it's a weird way to fucking talk about it. It's like the Antichrist and but basically what they're saying is like the being that is filled with the most goodness, the being that's filled with the most shittiness. These are two sides of the same coin. Everybody's got different math. Eventually somebody is going to come through who is going to be the shittiest one, and his energy will amass something. And eventually there will be a one who is the best one, and he's demonstrating it the best way. And, that was Yeshua. When he was around, he was showing people how to raise your vibration. And I'm sorry for those people out there who think this is sacrilegious on any level, but I do believe that Jesus was here to teach us how to be like him, not teach us how to just be like ourselves and peace with it. He was trying to show us how to level it up, And I try to, be as much like Christ-like in the ways that I know are absolutely right, to turn the other cheek. And, he's such a wonderful fucking example of things. But the way that he's been used is often to kind of dispower people and sort of make people feel like there's Christ and then there's you. And I think that Christ was going, yo, look what we can do. You can do it too. Look what we did. Look what I can do. Kingdom of heaven is within you. God is within you. Of course, I throw my, I have nothing but respect and admiration for Yeshua, but I don't believe in 1 degree of respect more than I should be given. I believe all respect is equal. I believe all things are equal. I believe that Christ went around respecting everybody like they were his equal. Because they are. And that's how you do it. Equality. So, you might be famous, man. You're probably famous in at least one life. And you might be connecting to the same life that another person is connecting to as well. There are what some people would refer to as soul groups, which are essentially the same soul, just configured differently. I would tell you that one of my best friends, Digger Mesh, who me and Digger have only gotten close in the past year, but I actually believe wholeheartedly that Digger and I are the same soul. We're configured differently, very differently. And it's sort of, I think, for both of us, an awesome experience because we're very similar. We come from a very similar place. But the expression of, in this case, Jesse, and in that case, Digger, is different, uniquely different. And there's things for him to learn from me, and there's things for me to learn from him because it's just sort of me in a different outfit. And I'm just kind of him in a different outfit. And Digger is a little older than me too. Every generation has sort of a little bit of an easier time with getting their way to calmness and getting their way to like a sort of a desire for like a universal peace. Because there's karma is real. Like God, the universe, the consciousness, it wants to fucking make up for shit. There's a reason why movies on, yes, get him, like that back and forth of like, hey, there's an accounting and we need to make accounting of this. That shit's real. But my kids, and my kids, they're going to be even closer to this beautiful, peaceful vibration. And they're going to hurt themselves less and they're going to hurt each other less. And it's great. We're all different based on where we've been born. I think that my son Grayson may be me and Digger as well, and that he's a different configuration of me and of Digger. But he's so young, and he's going to come in with even less of this anger and frustration. But like me and Digger, he's really powerful. He's got real powerful energy. And when he does get sucked into getting bullied by his brother or something like that, he'll explode, and he's really angry. And and people, oh, you're angry. Which is like stuff that like, Digger and I would sometimes get like in trouble for, like, because, well, I have a lot of energy and I'm expressing myself. I feel this way. But he has me. And I've been working on all this spiritual stuff. So I'm giving him the lessons that I'm learning right now as a little kid, you know? And that's going to be able to help him. You know, funnily enough, this episode's on reincarnation. When I met Digger, reincarnation was the one like kind of line he drew in the sand. He didn't believe in reincarnation. And I found that so interesting. And I felt like, well, you know, obviously we're here together for a reason, because, like, you know, I've been thoroughly convinced by, you know, the books and people who I've been able to put in front of myself that there's definitely something here, and I know there's a lot to learn from it. You know, so I just kind of like that book, Many Lives, Many Masters. My copy is on Digger's coffee table right now. I don't know if you started reading yet, but I recommended it to my great friend. I went, this is the thing. And he's a Buddhist. But, you know, one of the first things he told me, well, you know, not all Buddhists believe in reincarnation, and that's true. But honestly, I think, like, you know, the lack of getting into the reincarnation thing is that it's a little scary because it's complex. It's like, how am I supposed to fucking, you know? But there is a lot to learn from being able to connect to these lives. And, you know, in recent time, and I'm not going to get into detail here, but in recent time I connected to a certain life that I remember my brother sort of saying, like, well, why is this important? Like, because it was a fairly grandiose sort of thing. I am this person. Wow, wow, wow. And he was like, well, why is this important? It seemed to him like it was like me, like, patting myself on the back. Look who I was. And that wasn't why I had come across the name or the person. I didn't know why I'd come across the information. I just sort of like came across it, and it kind of was, again, like one of those things. Somebody walked over my grave. I was like, whoa, that might be right. That feels right on some level. And shortly after that, and, you know, as I explored it more, because I'd only sort of like just begun to explore it and think about it a little bit, I realized that it was because of that person's relationship, and that I was in a relationship with the same person, that they were in a relationship in their life. And I saw what had happened basically towards the end of their life, and where they had ended things with themselves in that relationship and in that relationship. And I was basically given an opportunity to forgive myself and to kind of learn from the experience and to do things differently this time. And it was important. It was very important for me to know that. So, you know, you're not going to want to share all these things, you know, because sometimes if you got friends who, you know, are ego compromised, and you're going to tell them that, like, you know, you're visiting with Da Vinci every night, you know, like, like Digger's mom right now. Digger's mom is in a very interesting place. She almost passed away, and she's been in like a constant, almost psychedelic state where she's connected to the other side of things. And every night she's been visiting with Da Vinci. And that may sound like a crazy thing to anybody who she might tell, but that's not a crazy thing to me. She knows who Da Vinci is. She respects who Da Vinci is. It means something to her conceptually. And on some level, perhaps she's connected to this spirit. She's somebody who was always in the arts, who was always pursuing the arts, who always really wanted to be special. She basically had told me that she kind of wasn't quite special, but she loved those people. She wanted to be one of those people, and that Digger was special. And she very sweetly said, and you must be special too, because you're with Digger. Digger is very special. But she was talking about her whole life. She had seen it from this new perspective. She got to see it from outside herself during her near-death experience. And now she's like having some real next level, just sort of ponderings about her existence and whatnot. And honestly, as Digger's friend and you know, and caring about her from just, you know, getting to spend a little bit of time with her, I really want to help her, because coming back from the near-death experience, it's always because there's something that you have to do. And she's definitely in like a weird state right now where she can't really do a lot. And, you know, she's in a hospital, but she's together. She's thinking, but she's also on another consciousness level that is like tripping into, she's making her kind of trip, and everything she's saying is legit. You know, and like I said, she probably would sound crazy to another person, but she doesn't sound crazy to me at all. Because these connections, you know, so I've had homeless men come up to me and tell me that they were Christ. And I do not doubt that they have either in a past life had a very powerful connection with Christ, who was going around and speaking to people too. He was connecting with a lot of people very, very, very strongly. And what Christ, you know, you could there's a lot of interpretations of this, but the way that I've kind of come to see it is another term, a kundalini. When you have a kundalini awakening, you have to catch a kundalini awakening from somebody else who's vibrating in a certain way. You catch their vibration. Well, similarly, Jesus had this what is called the Christed vibration, Yeshua. He he was helping other people to open themselves up to that level, to higher levels of consciousness. And I've had multiple sort of things with Christ in other lives where I was like a disciple or whatever, and he was like activating me and activating other people. So there's all sorts of possibilities, you know? And if that guy's Jesus, great. You know, like we should be being nice to everybody. And it shouldn't matter, because we're all Jesus. We're all God. We're all each other. We're all the rocks, and we're all the TVs and the posters and everything, you know, in my son's room here. We're all of it. It's all us. It's all just consciousness configured into a shape so that we as consciousness can ride a human body or any sort of fucking body we want and come and experience ourselves and each other in interesting ways. And this is just going on and going on and going on. Hey, sweetie, I'm just finishing my podcast in here. All right. Well, my babies are here, and I've been going for an hour and 5 minutes on reincarnation, so I think I'm good. Hi, sweetie. Hey, please. I love you. All right. Well, I love you guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the show. I'll talk to my people watching on the Facebook Live in just a second before I get out of here. But I got to go do some biography book report with my daughter and make them some food and stuff. Anyway, I love you so much, and thank you for listening to this show. Coolest Geek Alive is my entertainment show, my media show, my show on writing every Wednesday. And then Saturday, I do a Coolest Pick, TV shows and movies that I love. I just recently reviewed something that's in theaters right now. It's called Riff Raff. It's really great. Bill Murray's in it. Ed Harris. It's a great cast. Worth checking out. Check out the review. It's like my review episodes are usually like 8 minutes or something like that. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening to the show at our new time and date on Mondays. Please join me again next Monday for another fucking awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Peace, ladies.
There's something in the water. There's something in the air. The proof is all around us. It's not a matter of time. Sure as the blaze in your eyes, I sense a subtle shift. Instincts I can't resist. Weary of wolves in disguise. Drunk on a gallon of wine. Red as the rivers you cried. Bad apples spoil the punch.